Hi everyone, welcome to the Coping Out Loud Club podcast. Welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time listening. Gosh, I sound professional. Trust me, I am not. Oh shit, it's not even on. Oh god. I was recording for ages and it wasn't even turned on, the microphone. Oh, welcome. Welcome to the Coping Out Loud Club podcast where I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. Oh god, I'm delirious. I have a really bad migraine, so please bear with me. Okay, so this intro's fucked. Today I wanted to talk about like why I haven't recorded anything for ages. It's partly because I've been really unwell, but it's also because of fucking perfectionism. So I don't think I come across as like a recovering perfectionist because I've worked very hard at it in terms of externally, like, but internally, oh my god, it's a fucking nightmare. My brain, I'm a perfectionist at heart and it's a nightmare. And those of you who know. I love the term recovering perfectionist because that is definitely what I am and I probably always will be. And I think like I've come a long way, but I've got a long way to go. So basically, I just thought it was interesting to talk about it because I've been really enjoying recording these podcast episodes. And then the little gremlins in my brain, not so fucking little, gremlins in my brain have been like, who wants to listen to this shit? Like, what have you got to say? Like, why would anyone want to listen to you? Kind of nonsense. Well, it's not nonsense because part of me truly believes that. But, even if one person listens, that's all that matters. And I just wanted to start. I've always wanted to do this, like I've said in other episodes. Like, I've always wanted to have a podcast. So the whole premise of this podcast is that it's like so not perfect. Like, that's the whole point. Like, I'm sitting in my pajamas. I have a migraine. I don't know if I'm fully making sense. I never do. I hope I am. But basically, for me, I've been struggling to record because it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be as good as I want it to be. It's not going to be what it could be if I was better or if this was happening or something. And so I've been putting it off. And I think I just want to talk about that because I think that's a very human thing to do, is to like put off something that we know is going to help us. So this podcast really helps me. It's like become very therapeutic. And I'm really grateful for that. But then I've like not been doing something that's going to help me because of my fucking gremlins in my brain. And I think I feel loads of shame about like my perfectionism because I think I feel embarrassed as well. There's a lot of feelings there because I don't want to be that, like I know, like intellectually, nobody's perfect. Actually, let's get started on that. Sorry, my ADHD is on fire at the moment. I can't hold one train of thought to save my life. I remember the day that I found out that nobody was perfect. That sounds really weird, but I was sat in my San Francisco therapy office when I was living in California, and I just started therapy. And this is going to sound weird, but I'll just tell you about it. So, we'd been doing therapy for a while. She was amazing. She was so, so amazing. She changed my life, and I'm forever grateful for those few years of therapy. This was sort of like early doors, it was the first few months. And I remember when I like realized that she wasn't perfect, and that might sound weird. I think I was 24. Yeah, I was 24, and I was sort of starting therapy after a lifetime until then, a lifetime of abuse and trauma, and a lot of beautiful things, but a lot of trauma involved in the first 24 years of my life. And so there was a lot of sort of life truths, I called them, that I genuinely didn't know. Like, I can remember the day I found out about unconditional love. I was 23. It all came crashing down around when I was like 23, 24. So I was 23. I was sat looking over where I used to live in Wales, looking over the sea with a old friend who used to be a therapist, and he said, "You know, Amani, you don't have to do something for someone to love you." And I was like, "What?" I laughed. I thought it was a joke. I was like, "What?" Like, my mind was blown. I mean, I just thought it was a joke. And then he obviously explained that it wasn't a joke, and my heart sort of like broke. Like I fully did not know what that was at all. Anyway, I totally digress. I just thought of that because I was talking about my therapist in California and having these like life truths that have learned. I learned a lot of in my 20s, and I was doing lots of therapy, and I've not stopped with therapy, but I still have these moments where I learn like these mind-blowing things that like people who have had like, not 24 years of hardcore trauma and growing up way quicker than I should have very early on. Um, People who haven't had that sort of trauma, I think, have just a different way of being with themselves, and they have this more knowledge of like what a healthy love looks like and healthier attachment. And obviously, my attachment's a shit show, so that's another podcast episode. Um, but yeah, when I was in San Francisco, bringing it back to that, I said to her about realizing that she wasn't perfect, and it kind of this is going to sound maybe bizarre, but like it made me actually angry, not to her like, but about the fact that not even her was perfect. Because then she said, she was like, but what does that mean for you, Amani? Like, if I'm not perfect, and it's common. She was my first proper therapist, and it's common to put a therapist on a pedestal, and that's definitely what I did. And she was fucking cool and amazing, but I definitely put her on a pedestal, and it came crashing down when I realized that not even her is perfect, and nobody is perfect. And I think I'd spent my whole life, and I still struggle with it, but I just, up until that point, I'd spent my whole life striving for this perfection that just literally didn't exist. Like, and it will never exist. And so she said, like, what, if I'm not perfect, what does that mean for you? And it was such a light bulb moment, because I was like, oh my God, that means that I don't need to be perfect. And that might sound really obvious, but it wasn't to me at all. Um, I spent my life just, this is a whole big story, but just to explain, like my whole life growing up, there was a lot of trauma and abuse, and like I had a big adult role from the age of 3 of like taking care of my mom with her diabetes. And unfortunately, as I got older and time went on, it became a lot more abusive, and it was all behind closed doors. Like, lots of people didn't know what was going on. But I basically, the reason I'm talking about this is because I think my perfectionism stems from, well, a desperate need for control in a very chaotic environment. And this idea that if I remember being so young, like I must have been about 6, I don't know, I was like super young. And I remember realizing that if I, like, obviously I didn't have the words for this at the time, but I remember it very clearly, but I just mean I wouldn't have been able to intellectualize it and articulate it when I was 6. But I remember very much working out that if I could be perfect, then maybe my mum would love me like I could see other kids being loved by their mum. So I feel like perfectionism for me, sorry, this has become like a complete long waffle about my life, but there's a lot there's a lot there. um but basically I spent all that time as a kid, like from very young, I spent all this time working out that if I could be perfect, oh fuck, I need a drink. Basically, I could see that if my mum, if I was perfect, if I did nothing wrong, then maybe like things would be okay, and my mum would love me and not spew so much hate towards me. And it sounds really bad saying that, because towards other people she was giving a lot of love, but that's what was really confusing, is that I got the complete opposite of that at home behind closed doors, it was a totally different story. I spent my whole, like, up until 24 years old, I spent that time just desperately trying to be perfect with my mum and desperately trying to not put a foot wrong, to hope that she would not be abusive. I later knew that that's what that was. At the time, I just sort of thought it's what I deserved. I could see this other life that other people were living, my friends, and I could see it, but I knew that that wasn't my life. And I just assumed it wasn't for me. And I've been trying to like get that life ever since learning about unconditional love and just like love in a healthy way, not love and abuse. Like I've always talked about how I want to know love, just love, like not love and abuse, because there's no doubt my mum loved me, like 100% somewhere inside, like of course, but that wasn't what I got. I got a lot of hate, and I don't mean this in a poor me way. I just mean it to explain. For me, perfectionism is wrapped up in a lot of trauma, I think. But perfectionism is just like so interesting anyway, even if it's not attached to trauma. I think we all struggle in different ways with perfectionism. Some people like obviously it's crippling, but I think that you can't help but struggle with it to a certain extent in this society, in this capitalist patriarchal society. Like I feel like obviously for some people, myself included, it's become completely crippling at times, aka most of the time. Um, like, but yeah, I mean, I've come a long way, like I said, but I know that I still have this little like inner perfectionist in my brain, and that quote from a philosopher, I think it's a French philosopher, who says, "Don't let best be the enemy of good." Like that's something that I do try and think of a lot ever since I was reminded by my good friend Bridget, who is a legend. Shout out. The reason I think I love that quote, "Don't let best be the enemy of good," is because it's just so, I know it sounds really obvious, but it's just so true. You know, let's take texting friends, for example. Like, I will, like, I desperately want to send a message, but I want to send it a proper message. I want to send it how I want to send it, and I want to say what I want to say, and I want to make a good reply. But I'm always too ill, don't have the spoons, don't have the capacity or whatever. So then the text never gets sent. And then the more time that goes on, the bigger it becomes and the more of a message it needs to become, in my brain. Whereas if I just sent the fucking text like 3 weeks ago, a holding message or something, like anything is better than nothing. And I think that's what this podcast is for me, is like a challenge to my inner fucking perfectionist, that has, protected me a lot. And I think it's really important to identify why we have these sort of inner criticky parts of us, and this inner perfectionism. I think it's important to see it from a compassionate lens, as well as getting really fucking frustrated with it, and to see why it's there and how it's there. And yeah, I feel like it's really important to have compassion towards yourself with everything. But equally, I can't deny that it's so fucking hard to be a recovering perfectionist. And so shout out to all of you recovering perfectionists. Like, I know it sounds super cheesy, but it's like, it's true. It's brave to try and tackle perfectionism because it goes against what we're fed by this culture that we live in. It also probably challenges reasons why you have perfectionism, aka possibly wrapped up in trauma, or just often not even trauma, but just upbringing. We can develop these perfectionistic habits, if that's even a phrase, and just like this belief that we need to be perfect, like for so many different reasons. Like everyone's so different. Yeah, I think there is quite a shared reality with perfectionism that doesn't really get talked about enough. So I think this is a part one of perfectionism, and talking about perfectionism, because I would love to talk more about it, because I have a lot of empathy for people struggling with it. And I also just want to talk about it more because I'm struggling with it. And I know that sometimes if we just hear people share about their experiences, then it can help us feel less alone. And I'd love to hear how perfectionism has sort of appeared in your life, because I think it can look quite different. And I think perfectionism can be sort of like this this classic picture of perfectionism, and actually it often doesn't look like that. And people can it can get missed with like people that's actually ultimately quite often a root of struggle within their emotional health and their like feelings of self-esteem and confidence and stuff. It's often because we're putting ourselves up against such high standards that are literally unachievable, yet we keep trying and we keep trying and we keep berating ourselves. And yeah, so just big love to anyone struggling with that, and fair fucking play for facing it. And we're all a work in progress, like big time. And I think in that, it's important to think about how far we've come and to see where we want to go. But as a classic recovering perfectionist, I obviously often only see like what I need to change, where I need to go, how I need to be, what I need to do different, and how I want to, ultimately be as a human, and what's yeah, just that's another episode. But that's my perfectionism getting in the way of me like seeing how far I've come. And it's hard for me to say these words because I want to squirm. I am squirming at the same time, but ultimately, like, talking about it makes me realize that I have done work on it, and I think it's okay, and it's important actually to voice when we're proud of ourselves and where we've from, like, and see where we've come from. And like we can hear that in our inner perfectionist, and ultimately our inner perfectionist is there to help us in the sense of like we want to do our best, we want to always know that we're trying our best and stuff, but pipe the fuck down, like the volume needs to be turned down. And that your inner parent and that inner wise person that we all have in us, or we can think of somebody in our lives, a wise person, even if we don't feel we have that in us. We all do, but I just mean if you can't connect to it, just thinking of what you'd say to a friend. Think of them. You'd never speak to them how you speak to yourself about like all of this stuff. Anyway, I'm just going to start waffling and waffling if I don't stop, and none of us need that. So I'm going to tap out, but thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you all, and message me if you need. I would love to hear any feedback of what you want to hear, and I will have guests on the podcast. I just have been too unwell to sort that out. It's just a case of record a podcast whenever the fuck I can. So yeah, sending lots of love to you all. And if anyone is struggling, because I know a lot of you are, based on through my social media, I've done quite a lot of polls lately, and a lot of you are struggling. So I just want to acknowledge any of you who are listening that I see you. I'm struggling too. It's a fucking rough world out here, and you're not alone, most importantly, even though I realize it does get very lonely. But no matter how lonely it gets, you're not alone. And if you feel it, you can guarantee someone else feels it too. And if you're struggling with it, you can guarantee someone else is struggling with it too. So yeah, sending lots of love.